Today we are going to talk about ethics, especially humanist ethics. We are talking about civilization, especially humanist civilization. We'll do it the most simply possible, but will be complete if possible. So we may try to define what is humanism, because for many people that may be confusing. Well, if I can be the most simple possible, is to say that humanism is a system of civilization, a moral system of civilization, a system of principles, a system of values to solve problems, to confront the problems that humanity and people face and solve them in the most efficient way possible. Therefore, we can have a long list of problems that can be solved. I mentioned many of them in the book. We can come back later on and I will mention more. This is a universal philosophical viewpoint that places the emphasis on the right of people, especially the dignity and the worth of every human being, whatever its race, color, sex, or nationality. Therefore, this is a universal approach to morality. Another way to look at it is to say that humanism places its emphasis on human beings, their potential, their realization, and propose empathy between humans, compassion, sharing between people. So it's not an egoistical approach to life. Of course, it's not always difficult to leave the realm of egotism, but we believe that altruism is better than the reverse. And finally, we can say that humanism relies on reason and logic and science to progress and have increased knowledge of our environment, our place in the universe. This is a way to increase our liberty, our prosperity with the resources that we have. More basically, humanist code of morality only teaches people how to live their life honorably. And I take a quotation by one of the founder of humanism, is the great German 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant, who said, "It's not absolutely necessary that I be happy, but it is absolutely important that I live my life honorably." So to be a humanist is to want to live one's life honorably. In my book, The Code for Global Ethics, I have tried to identify the 10 most important humanist principles. Doesn't mean that there are not others, because we could have a list of 20, but the most fundamental ones. And I've tried also to compare these principles with other moral principles that other systems have and make a critique of them, and we can compare. In the appendix, we do comparisons. So the first two principles of humanist philosophy, if you like, first, to proclaim the dignity and the worth, inherent worth of every human being, as I said, without race, color, sex, or nationality. The second is to proclaim the respect for life of every individual on earth, with no discrimination also. This is very important because what is the main property of a human being? It's his life or her life. If you remove that, you rob that person of the most important property that he or she has. Then there are two more principles, very fundamental, that uses three basic humanist values: empathy, human empathy, tolerance for individuals, and sharing between the lucky ones and the less lucky ones in society. This is unavoidable. In the case of empathy, you have to compare two moral rules. Everybody knows about the golden rule that you find in all moral codes. Don't do to others you don't want them to do to you. There's a certain egoistical approach in that golden rule, and a certain reciprocity. If I don't kill you, you don't kill me. If I don't rob you, you don't rob me, and all that. Humanist approach, of course, accept the golden rule, but put the empathy principles also on top of it. Empathy means that one should put himself or herself in somebody else's shoes to see what is acceptable or not. Will it be acceptable that I kill that person if I were that person? Of course not. Will it be acceptable that I rob that person if I were that person? Of course not. So there's less emphasis on reciprocity and more on altruism. So that's why I call it the supreme humanist rule of morality. Don't do to others what you would not like to be done to you if you were in their place. And the reciprocity exists. Do to others what you would like them to do to you if you were in their place. In other words, somebody is starving, you will feed him, because if it were in your case, you will like to be fed. It's a bit, there are other similar moral rules like that, that says that we at birth we don't know what will be in life. Therefore, we should have an approach that is altruistic, because if we end up unlucky, we would like other people to help us. So it's altruism. And tolerance. Of course, tolerance is important for liberty, because we should respect the right of people to decide for themselves what they want, how they want to live their life, provided it doesn't create bad side effects to society in general. But liberty, individual liberty, is important. But we have to be careful, as I explained in the book, especially in chapter 11, because tolerance is chapter 3. We have to make a distinction between the rights of individuals and ideologies and ideas. Ideas and ideologies don't have rights. Humans have rights. That, of course, you can practice, you can believe in anything you like, but doesn't mean that you can impose to the entire society a system. For example, communism. In a communist country, there was only one ideology that could be acceptable. Without that, if you didn't believe, you were put in jail. There are some countries that have a state religion. In Saudi Arabia, for example, if you are not a Muslim, therefore you are put into jail. And if you publish something against that religion, you may be killed. This is completely unacceptable. In other words, humanist morality preaches tolerance of individuals, but we don't have to accept what is intolerable. And what is intolerable, it's something that crushes the individual in support of a system, which can be anti-democratic, anti-liberty. Regarding sharing, this is very important also, because we live in a society where the disparity between the rich and the poor is getting larger and larger and larger. We talk about the 1% making a lot of money, while 99%, especially 90%, don't make anything more than they used to make 30 years ago. Because now people can avoid responsibilities in individual countries by going elsewhere, by going to tax havens around the world. And that makes it more difficult for government to help the more disadvantaged people in society. In the book, for example, I propose something which similar to what had been proposed by economist James Tobin, for example. He proposed 1/10 of 1% tax on currency transaction. I'm not against that proposal, but it will be difficult to implement, because people can go to tax havens and do financial transaction and not pay that tax. I propose that we have a United Nations union or agency called the International Solidarity Union that will raise 1/10 of 1% of taxation, that's very 1/10 of 1% on consumption in the richer country, the half richer country in the world, in order to create education, financing education, health, and infrastructure in the poorer countries. Therefore, if we help the poorer countries, maybe they won't move their surplus of population to the other countries illegally, making it a big problem. These are the four first principles. The fifth one is a very wide principle. It's a no domination principle. In other words, people should attempt not to dominate other people by lies, by lying. Nowadays, it's sad to say, but most of the wars in the world are declared under false pretenses, sometimes using false flag operation. In other words, create a problem and putting the blame on a victim, as it was done in Ukraine in February 2014. And it has been everywhere. We see that, of course, the media don't tell us that too much. They don't analyze as much. So that's another problem. The medias now are controlled more and more by big financial interests, and journalist ethics has been declining for many years now, and it's part of the problem. So no domination. The other sixth principle is the question of no superstition and no idolatry. Of course, people can say we are used to have superstition. You know, you go to a country like India, they don't get married on a certain date. They don't do that. They don't buy a house on a certain date. Or they believe in so many gods, and they think that there are divinities working for them. There are demons who work against them and all that. These are myths and fictions that may help some people, but they are not very useful, especially at the level of a country. So the seventh principle, the humanist principle, is to conserve the environment. According to the idea that planet Earth is the only place where humans so far can live. Therefore, a current generation doesn't own the Earth. We are renting the Earth for the next generation. And we should leave the Earth in as good a shape as we inherited from our parents. Therefore, we should fight pollution. We should try to preserve the other species. If we overfish the ocean, for example, the next generation won't have any fish left. If we deplete the resources, the energy resources, the fossil energy resources, there won't be any left for the future. Of course, there will be new technology in the future and we can progress. But the control, the respect for the environment is a humanist fundamental value. So that's the number 7. Number 8, it's regarding war of aggression. War of aggression that we thought had disappeared after 1945, when people created the United Nations. In the Charter, the UN Charter of the United Nations, it's well inscribed that launching a war of aggression is illegal. It's illegal. It's a treaty that to belong to the United Nations, you have to subscribe. Therefore, you cannot launch a war. You cannot invade another country with military means like Nazi Germany did to Poland and other countries. And at the Nuremberg trial, people who had been part of that decision to launch a war or to invade other countries were condemned. Nowadays, unfortunately, the successor of the Nuremberg trial has been the International Criminal Court. But not all countries belong to the International Criminal Court. For example, the United States, which is the most powerful country in the world, militarily at least, and economically, had accepted to be part of that, the Treaty of Rome, creating the criminal court, with the Clinton administration in 1999. But when George W. Bush was elected president in 2000 and then went into power in 2001, he withdrew the United States approach to support for the International Criminal Court, with the end result that the United States, for example, which has become more and more imperial in its approach internationally, cannot have their leader subject to laws, international law, if they declare war. This is unacceptable. That means we live in a semi-civilized world when some countries are subject to laws, some other countries are not subject to laws. This is a big defect that has to be corrected. We have to go back to the principle of the 1949 United Nations. The other two principles regard the institution. For example, number 9 says, if we believe in the dignity of worth of every individual, the corollary principle is that every adult individual, should be able to participate in the power in their country. They should be participant in the government, participatory democracy. So democracy, as Winston Churchill said, it's not the most perfect system in the world, but that's the best we have found so far, compared to theocracy and royalties and all these centralized communist approach, or fascist approach. Therefore, democracy is very important for the dignity of every individual. Therefore, the principles of democracy has to be paramount in any constitution. There are still countries that says that leaders are placed there by divinities. Even advanced countries like the United Kingdom, they say the Queen of England has been named there by God wills. And even what is more scandalous in Canada, Pierre-Éliott Trudeau in 1982 put in the Canadian Constitution, that was never subject to a referendum, that the power in our society comes from God and not from the people, while the democratic principle says power comes from the people and it's delegated to politicians and the government, and not divinities that we cannot see. So democracy is very important. And the other is very important is the importance of education in a country. Not education of religious dogmas, and sometimes people learn by heart the Bible, the Quran. That's not education, that's rut learning. You have to learn the essentials, of course, to live in society, and the essentials is getting larger and larger. You have to know about the internet now. You have to know a lot of things. Technology is expanding. So it's not only how to count, how to read, and how to write, and things like that. It's a lot of things now that we have to learn. And we have to learn also how to live more morally in a society. So we have to learn ethical ways to live. We have to learn how to live civilly in a society. So education is more important. Then the access of education should be more easy. As I said in the book, no young person should be denied an education just for monetary reason. I do my small part. I give money to my own college to give fellowships to students, but there's a withdrawal of the governments in many countries to help people to get educated. That's very dangerous because they are the future generation. If they are less educated, they will be less efficient, less productive. These are the 10 basic humanist principles. So when I said that we have the impression sometimes to live in a crazy world, It's because we function according to rules that could have been true a few thousand years ago, or even before the Bronze Age. The code of revenge, for example, the code of Hammurabi was one eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, means it's revenge. Therefore, if somebody robbed me, I have to rob him. If he kills one member of my family, I have to kill one member of his family. So it's a vicious circle of immorality. And that functions like that. You see why there's so much trouble in the Middle East? Because they believe in the Hammurabi Code. The Hammurabi Code is 4,000 years old, when people didn't know how to read, how to write. This is a stupid code. For that time, maybe that was the best they could have, but that we have in the 21st century other code of conducts that refer to the Hammurabi principle is really crazy. So therefore, the book is not about humanist ethics. It's also a criticism of the current system of morality, of ethics, that are still in place. And by atavism, people still believe them. And I have 5 main criticisms of these codes, and I challenge any leader of these codes, of these ethical codes, to contradict what I wrote in the book. First, I'm still surprised that many of these moral codes, many are religion-based, are still very selective. They are sectarian, and they are primitive also. They explicitly apply to everybody, they say. But implicitly, they say you should not kill a member of our congregation or our religion, but kill the other guy, the miscreant, the non-believers, the strangers. That's all right. As a matter of fact, some of the religious books say that clearly. You should not talk to other of the other religion. You should not. And if you meet one, you should kill him because he doesn't believe in the same God that you believe. This is crazy. I mean, that's revenge or whatever. This is exclusion. In a smaller planet. The planet Earth now is getting smaller and smaller, but because technology with the satellites means that we know what's going on all over the world instantly. Therefore, to say that the other guy, because he doesn't belong to my club, has no right, this is crazy. I mean, that rule should be put to the dumps of history, dumb bench of history. Desmond Tutu, who is the bishop from South Africa, he used to say something that summarizes the danger of that rule, insider versus outsider. He said, Tutu said, really, the religions are a bit like a knife. If you can use it 2 ways. You can use it to cut bread, that's useful. But you can use it also to cut the throat of somebody else. That's not very useful. That's the fact that that's evil. And religion, and I criticize religious leaders for that, they should purify their message and keep the good side of their religion, but render the other side unusable by spirits that are banned to do bad deeds. Okay, this is the first criticism. A second criticism of the current moral code, especially the religion-based moral codes, is that they make the basic mistakes that the earth and human beings, are the center of the universe. Well, that could have been acceptable 1,000, 3,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, when people thought that the sun was going around the earth, because that's what they saw, the sun will rise, the sun will set. But that's not true anymore. In 1632, Galileo proved that the Earth was a planet, like other planets, going around the Sun. The Sun is the center of the solar system. And the solar system in the Milky Way is one of thousands and thousands of other suns. And in the universe, we have 200 billion other Milky Ways or galaxies. Therefore, the idea that the human being is the center of the universe doesn't hold any water anymore. It's non-scientific. But there are two other discoveries that go in the same direction, very important. In 1859, Charles Darwin, not only the origin, in his book, The Origin of Species, demonstrated that all human species are the result of millions of years of slow evolution. And that evolution continues. We see that the microbes evolve, the viruses evolve. It's an evolution. This is negated by religious nuts, but this is a scientific fact that you can say that the Earth is flat and believe that the sun goes around the Earth, if you want to believe that, but this is completely wrong. Therefore, human beings are more intelligent, more evaluated than other species, but this is a question of degree. It's not a substance. And another discovery, which is only 60 years old, in 1953, Watson and Crick discovered the DNA, the acid that is in every human cells and in the 46 chromosomes, making one individual unique. But what is discovered and what is revolutionary was the fact that 96 to 99% of the DNA of an average human is the same as a chimpanzee. Now that means that the chimpanzee is a parallel species that evolved over millions of years and not completely distinct. Of course, humans are the most advanced because we have a cortex that makes us more intelligent, and that's why we conquer the Earth. But it doesn't mean that we should eradicate everything in the Earth because we are more intelligent. On the contrary, we should behave more morally because we are more intelligent. Because to be moral is to be intelligent. And conversely, to be intelligent is to be moral. So this is a basic criticism that I launch against religious-based ethics. It's not true. It's not true. And try to prove the contrary. It's not true. You should put that aside. It's not true. A third mistake also that's made, and that mistake has consequences also. It's because historically there has been a tendency for political leaders to associate themselves with religious leaders or with sorcerers, if you like. One helping each other. For Christianity, for example, it began in 2015 when Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. Then the religious leaders said, the morality for a head of state is not the same as the morality for an individual. So they made a split between private morality and public morality. In other words, an individual should not kill, he should not steal, and that's very important. But for king of state, president, prime minister, dictators, whatever, they can kill, they can rob, they can wage wars. It's acceptable because for their morality, they give only, according to some religious people. They are only to give report to a god. And every different groups have different gods. Judaism, they have Yahweh. And Yahweh tell them in the Bible, you can rob the next city, you can take their wives, make them their girls, make them their slaves, and so on and so on. The Muslim have their Allah, and Allah tells them, you can have if a caliphate like they do with the ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. You can kill, you can cut the throat of anybody who doesn't belong to no group, and that will be legal. But you cannot cut the throat. One individual cannot decide that on its own. So that double standard is completely unacceptable. The third flaw of religion-based morality is the arbitrary distinction that they make between private and public morality. In other words, private individuals are submitted to a certain code of conduct: do not kill, do not rob, and things like that. But kings, presidents, dictators are subject to another code because they are supposed to have been made there or placed there by divinities. And of course, every group has its own divinity, very convenient. Judaism has its Yahweh, and they have religious book that says, well, you can go and rob the next village and take people into slavery. That's all right. Then the Christian have their God that says in the Bible, you do that, there's no problem. If your head of state decide to invade another country, that's all right. And then there's the Muslim, there's the same thing with Allah. The individuals are constrained by a private code of conduct, but public code is flux. You can use it as you like. For example, for Christianity, in 315, Emperor Constantine decided to make a deal with the Christian leaders, and he proclaimed that Christianity was the only official religion, and the other religions were not acceptable, were illegal, as a matter of fact. So there was, that's the beginning of the double standard, because of course you cannot tell the emperor that he cannot wage war, or he cannot kill, or he cannot invade other countries, because that's his business. So an individual cannot kill, cannot rob, cannot invade the property of somebody else, but an emperor can. That was a big mistake. And the current leader, I think the current Pope, should declare that inadmissible, not acceptable. That we have a moral code for individuals, another moral code for head of states. It should be the same. In 1945, when we had the Nuremberg trial for criminal behavior during the war, it was well understood that nobody can pretend that because he was in the government that he could do murders and declare wars of aggression. And some people were condemned and put to death after the Nuremberg trial. But there was the principle that some code of conduct, some moral code, saying that what is good for the private individuals is not necessarily, doesn't apply necessarily to public officials. That's a big mistake. Humanist code of conduct says it says the same rule for every human beings. Same rights, but the same responsibility. The fourth criticism that I raise in the book against these ancient moral code is the fiction of the invention of the internal life of the human beings. This is not proven by any scientific discovery. This is a dangerous fiction because there are other inventions that are connected to that. We have the inventions of hell, paradise, other purgatory, other inventions that are really negative for other human beings who are not part of our club, religious club. And that creates a distinction between human beings. They are people who are in our club. Of course, they are subject to our moral code, but if they are outside, we can kill them, we can attack them, we can rob them, we can do anything we like. Some religions are wising up. For example, the Anglican Church has nearly abolished hell, saying that that was used to scare people away, but in fact, we don't think it exists. It's an invention. So all these inventions to demonize other people are not a good thing. It's a bad thing. It creates exclusion. It creates conflicts. And it feeds hatred between people. That's the last thing we want, to have more hatred between people. So these religious codes, in some instances, are the problems. They are not the solutions. They are part of the problem. Finally, there is the fifth criticism that I raised that has bad connotation, bad result, bad consequences, is the artificial distinction that many religious-based code of conduct make between the body and the mind, spirit. This is contrary to knowledge. We know that the human body is a whole, and brains, which is the most important organ that use a lot of energy, control the rest of the body. Well, 400 years ago, even doctors believed that the control mechanism of the body was the heart, and the brains was only sort of a radiator to cool the blood. Well, that's stupid today. No doctor believes that. But some church teaches the same old false idea that a human is two different entities. One, a body which is less high in the hierarchy, and then a sort of a soul or spirit which is eternal also, and will live distinctly from the body. Scientifically, that makes no sense, because human beings are a whole in themselves. But that creates a negative and pervasive bias against the body, human body. There's always a bias against the human body. Many religions, for example, thought that women were less pure than men, and after a birth, they were prevented from going to church for a whole month because they gave birth to were less pure. This is completely stupid. If they had their menstruation, they could not go to church and all that. That comes from that flaw, that mistake, that humans are two different parts, and one is mortal and the other is immortal. Completely stupid. Therefore, and that's the conclusion of my book, the humanist ethical code is superior to any other code. And I challenge any other ethical leader to say the contrary. I'm ready to argue publicly or privately with anybody on these questions. I will say two things in conclusion. The first is that it's obvious that the world now faces a moral dilemma, because with technology advancing so fast, with the earth getting smaller and smaller, it's of course that many people live an easier life now. We travel a lot. The economic productivity is higher for many people, and therefore this is a good thing. The bad thing is that we are more in a competitive environment between countries for resources. because we are going to need a lot of drinkable water. We are going to need sources of energy. All sources of energies are depleted, and there could be wars between people to control these resources. So it's a big moral dilemma, and we need a code to police that type of competition. So my last conclusion will be a very simple idea. As human beings, we are 7 billion of us, we live on the same smaller planet, and we should learn how to survive and progress as the same human race together. My next book is going to be a book of humanist quotation by thousands of great minds, from Plato, Aristotle, to modern thinkers, about humanist principles. And the book will follow the same chapters that we have in the Code for Global Ethics. When we talk about sharing, there will be quotations about sharing. When we talk about no wars, there will be quotes about wars. So it's going to be a book to read a few pages before going to sleep, to dream about wisdom. One title could be, because the title is not definitive, Humanist Wisdom. You don't read, of course, 10,000 quotations in a straight line. You read one page at a time. So that would be a good gift for Christmas people. You give that to people who don't read books. 25% of the people don't read books in 1 year. So to these people, you give them a book of quotations, humanist quotations, and in these, it's just like having 10,000 books, 10,000 philosophies, nice sayings. So that will be very good, and I expect it to be published in 2016.